Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Good afternoon. We're here with Mesa County Compass, and we are again interviewing Dennis Simpson of the City Council. Today we're going to talk about the 29 Road project. As you probably have seen, I have been very much in favor of the 29 Road project. Dennis is not in favor. I need to figure out why he's not in favor, because there's either something I don't know or something that we should know.
Or Dennis is wrong.
Exactly. No. So anyway, Dennis is going to explain to us why he does not think it's a good idea. Dennis, welcome, and
thanks for taking the time.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to come again. I think this is an important forum for our community. So,
great.
So anyway, Lisa.
Well, you had said that the 29 Road project is a bad fiscal decision.
Right.
And so let's start with money, which is my favorite thing to start with. I love money. Not that much, but.
Okay. This is an $86 million project, and the proponents are saying we will only borrow $80 million, but that probably does not include the fact that they're planning on paying a higher interest rate than market so that we can get more money out of an $80 million debt than $80 million. We can get maybe $86 million. But whatever, it's an $86 million project, and the proponents are saying they only need 80. But probably the biggest point I want to make on the city's commitment to this is that it's a verbal commitment. The proponents are proposing is that the county will go out with an $80+ million, let's say $86 million debt, and they will be responsible to the people who put up the money, the investors, to pay that all back. However, they are not going to have that on the ballot, except for the fact the city council, some of them, have entered in an intergovernmental agreement stating that we will pay half the debt service, which is roughly a total debt service of $5 million. So the city's half is $2.5 million. But what's not being disclosed to the public is that the city's commitment is 1 year at a time. So we're in fact making a verbal commitment that says we'll pay you for 30 years $2.5 million, and there's nothing in writing that would allow the county to enforce that. And
nothing in writing. That's just ludicrous. No contract.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have to make sure we're clear. There in fact is an agreement that we just signed, but it doesn't.
But
if
just
you don't have
at
any
a time.
teeth in it, then it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah, the agreement does not have any plans for what happens if 5 years from now we have a totally different council, and that priority isn't high for those people who happen to be on the council. And perhaps we're having to cut police and other kinds of many important services. The city council, under the agreement, can say we're not paying. And county, you're the one that got the debt. You're the one that committed it. So proceed and do what you need to do, because we just can't afford to make our payment.
I'm going to ask a really dumb question. What happens if the city or the county or the county default on a loan like that?
Well, the county is going to have a promise to raise property taxes if need be, and pledge collateral county collateral.
Oh.
No.
So it'll be hard for them to walk away from it. But it won't be hard for the city to walk away from it because we're not pledging anything other than a verbal promise that we're going to somehow come up with 2.5 every year.
Somehow this doesn't sound good to me.
No. And
I mean, I like the idea of the road. I like the idea of 29 Road being finally finished and making the beltway around the town. That's what my big thing was. Because we do need better traffic flow from Highway 50 to the interstate. But at that kind of an expense, sticking your neck out that far is not a good deal to me.
It isn't. I talked to a lot of people who have focused pretty much solely on this loop concept because it's been here for years and years and years that people have talked about it. Won't it be nice when we get that loop done? But things have changed, for one thing, but in another, for almost all of the time until the last 2 or 3 years, nobody's talking about how we're going to pay for it. As a matter of fact, Janet Rowland said at one meeting I was at that she thought the feds were going to pay for all of this. But the feds never gave any indication that they were going to pay for this, and have written a letter saying if you ever apply to us, we've got some easy to identify problems that you need to address. But as an overall rule statement, the feds haven't even done anything to analyze what we propose to do here. And the state, Colorado Department of Transportation, is all of the people who know engineering, know construction, that work for CDOT, are saying this is not a good idea. There are better ways to spend $80 million than on this interchange. And the fear is, and it seems like the plan of the proponents is, even though the people who know the most about roads are opposed to this, they may be counting on a political attack by getting the woman who's in charge of the Department of Transportation, Shoshona Lee, who knows nothing about building roads or very little, and the governor to override the people who know what's good for the state and federal system from a political angle, because we have some very politically active people in our community, and they have regular conversations with people in the political higher end at the state level, which it shouldn't be that way. If this is going to be done, it should first have the approval of the state engineers, and they're pretty much all opposed to it. And
why are they opposed?
Okay.
Yeah.
There are two reasons. The first one is that they think it's too close to the Horizon Drive, and that spending that much money on an interchange that doesn't meet their need on interstates, or the Fed's needs, which is to move traffic from state to state. That if people want to do things off the interstate, there's a program they may help with that, like if widening Patterson or any other kind of alternative as traffic grows, they might buy into that a lot easier than they're buying into this. But secondly, there's a policy within this Department of Transportation that says we don't add new facilities that we know will, statistically, with looking at interchanges all across the country, that will cause any death or injury because it went in. And
basically, you're talking about what I call runway ramps, so the merging traffic ramps.
Right. And the projection for this, well, as we've proposed it, although the design is very far from being done, is that we'll have 2.4 deaths and injuries on these per year from people trying to merge into a truck or something like that. And it's recent development as far as their policies is are doing everything they can to avoid that, even though they know they've got a lot of those interchanges that are real dangerous because you come around the corner and there your lane ends.
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
exactly.
You're going to stop. You're going to just turn it over there. You're going to look in your mirror. Most are going to look in their mirror, and almost everybody will get in. But the CDOT policy is that they don't fund things that cause that kind of problem.
So if CDOT won't approve it, then the feds definitely are out.
Yeah, the feds won't entertain a proposal from us. They won't. Then the only proposals they're going to entertain is if CDOT comes to them and says, "We have this project, we're in favor of it, and we want you to help fund it," and then we go from there. But the feds have looked at it a little bit and shown no signs of support. Have raised 2 or 3 good questions about how you can handle this, how you can handle that. So we're kind of pushing this hurry up before we have the people who we need as partners committed to letting us go ahead. There's been talk that the reason CDOT and the feds are not interested is because we don't have any money on the table. But when you read what CDOT and the feds have put in writing, that's not true. They didn't mention the fact that you have to come up with money first. They're looking at the safety of the system and the compliance with their own rules. Nothing to say about money. But the proponents continue to say, if we can just pass this and we can go to them with this big bucket of money, then they'll let us do it. And somebody says, well, they've done it that way before, but there's no written analysis of how long that they think it's going to take to convince the state and the feds if they pass this bond issue. So it could be a long time. It probably will be. Because the other thing that is in the CDOT response is the safety factor we think has to be solved by having what's called a braided lane. And I'm not an engineer and can't exactly explain it, but it's a whole idea of it
becomes its own lane. It
becomes its own lane, at least from the 29 road interchange that will be there up to Horizon. So when you're coming up 29 road to the north, before you get there, you will either pick lane A, which will go around and get on the interstate, or lane B, which will go up over that same lane and dump you into Horizon Drive. So, and it's pretty obvious.
I've seen that kind of thing in Phoenix. That's the only experience I have is I've seen that kind of a thing in Phoenix. It's kind of a rabbit trail. It's
is it achieving the purpose, which was to move people around the city so that they didn't have to go down Patterson? Wasn't that your argument before, Ruth?
Yes, because of the fact, my argument was because of the fact that we're going to have so much more traffic on Patterson when the rec center gets finished, that we needed a way to get around all of that and not have to go down Patterson. So that was my big argument.
Yeah. And it's questionable compared to having an interchange how much traffic the rec center is going to bring down 29 road. But it's an interesting thing that the proponents have done. For the last 20 years or more, we send in a list through a little bit different program to the state saying, here's the priorities for our area. Not just the city, not just the county, but the whole valley kind of. And always number one on that list has been the 29 road interchange. And number two has been expansion of 29 road. Because everyone knows that if you're going to put that interchange in, you're going to be dumping a lot of traffic onto and off of 29 road. But as a official priority, they know that they're going to have to make a 5-lane road with right-of-way, sidewalks, bike trails or bike,
Right.
you know,
Multimodal.
multimodal. And they don't in the $86 million, there's no money set aside for doing 29 road to that level.
So what they just have the 86 million is just for the interchange itself.
Right. And dump people out onto 29 road or let them get on. I don't know how far down it will go, but and they knew if they continued that process of number one is interchange, number two is 29 road, they would never be able to say we can pay for it because there's no hope that anybody but the city and county is going to pay for that 29 road. So what they did is say, all right, we're taking that 29 road off the most important list, and instead we're calling it an aspirational project, which is way down below anything that's prioritized. So you would think it'd be taking it clear off the list, but my understanding of what they're really doing is if they get it off that list, then we can approve it as whatever we want, and it doesn't have to be that big. But most likely, they're just buying time to see if they can figure out a way to raise the additional, and I believe it's $30 million to do that 29 road. The estimate is another $30 million that's not in the 86.
Okay, so that's something that we are not aware of either. Is the 86 million is bad enough.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking about another 30 million on top of that,
and I didn't put a price tag on when I talked about the braided lanes. That's 20 million more that's not in the current proposal. So it's
ouch. So we're looking at
maybe 130, 140.
Yeah,
but we won't borrow it now. We'll somehow just get that money and then figure a way to get the rest of that money either through a tax increase or going back through the same process again with the state.
So what would it take, do you think, for the state to finally say Grand Junction's big enough, they need another exit? Would it ever happen?
Not except for politics, I don't think. Not the people who know about, they put in a lot of interchanges and built a lot of roads. And I don't think that proponents have much hope of ever getting this done unless they pull politics. And then anything can happen.
Right.
Of course.
So what would we be losing if this bond issue goes through and the city's got that commitment of $2.5 million? Because they don't magically have $2.5 million more, something else is not going to be funded, I would think.
Yeah, and although it's been a while since the city staff have said where they're getting it from, when Greg Caton was here, he said it was coming out of the Capital Reserve, which is a money that was voted in 1989 or something that was used to build the roads to the mall, etc.
So has this been just a little bank account that they had, or?
Well, it's a lot of money.
Oh wow!
So it's something like $20 or $30 million a year that is in that bucket, and it's got a 10-year plan for how it's to be used by sitting down with staff and analyzing future needs. So while they don't talk about it, the best thing I can figure they're going to do is just slide projects back. So in 2000, if they really get this thing going in 2026, some of the 2026 projects would have to be moved to 2028, and it'd be like a river. All of the projects that we think we need. The
domino effect.
And this is similar to what happened when we had the election that raised the sales tax for roads, is when you can show that we're not keeping up with our roads 5 years from now, they come back to the voters and say, don't you want us to keep up with the roads? We're going to have a tax increase for that. And nothing will be said then that we really should have had tax. If we were going to add functionality at 29 road, that there should have been a tax voted on by the people then that's just devoted to 29 road. And they know they wouldn't pass that.
Right.
So they play this game of saying there's no tax increase, but we're going to spend money, tons of it,
Well, you know there's got to be a tax increase somewhere.
That's exactly right. So
It's
that
going to bite you.
yeah.
I find that very interesting. And then I thought at one time down the road, down the road in the early 80s, there was money set aside from Exxon to put into that interchange because they needed that 29 road corridor for their trucks and that kind of thing.
Well, they obviously don't need it now, and I
Right.
don't.
But I just wondered what happened to those monies.
I don't know. I've never heard about Exxon putting money into it. It's gone. I know that. It probably
It's
was gone. It was gone quite a while ago. Yeah.
Well, and that's just what I remember. If my memory could be foggy. We won't admit that. But
Yeah, I never forget anything either.
Yeah. So, do you think that the main reason that this issue is raised is they think that people have been promised this, and so they'll look like heroes if they deliver, or what do you? Why do you think it's
definitely has to do with having been promised? You know, like Cody Davis is one of the biggest proponents, and I don't know how long his family's been here, but I know John Davis, and they've probably been here a long time.
Cody said 6 generations. So,
yeah. So this is just carrying on the promise that their grandparents may have made. Their grandparents said, we really need 29 road interchange, but the world changed since that first promise was made. And, we haven't studied, is there a better way to move traffic through town than to have 29 road interchange? Because it's not needed. We don't even argue that it's needed for interstate travel.
Right. No,
We're
it's not
saying,
needed for interstate travel.
Right.
We understand
It's not like
that.
we have a big block of the highway they need to get traffic off of it so the rest of it can go through or anything like that.
That's just the people that live on the east side of 29 Road would like to have a shorter trip to hit the interstate than to have to
go up to 32
or down to Horizon Drive
Yeah.
to get onto the interstate.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of it's just a matter of
convenience.
For $86 million.
Yeah, okay.
And that's kind of why.
Ouch.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily 86 because you know that you will have to do the bike, and you cannot do a project without that.
That's just almost a standard anymore.
Yeah.
That it has to be taken care of. And then, a lot of others. But then on the other hand, and to me, this kind of all ties in same. Maybe I'm just out of my completely little mind. But what happens to all that traffic if, in fact, it does come off the rec center onto 29 Road? Do we want to expand 29 Road to the rec center? On the backside of that? What are you thinking there?
I haven't heard any studies done about the impact of the rec center, but you would think that maybe 50 cars a day are going an hour are going in there.
Well, you would think
50 cars an hour, you wouldn't need a lot more road, maybe somewhere, but we need to have studied that before we go and spend $86 million because the rec center is going in.
Okay, and I understand that too because we're taxed to death over the rec center in the first place. But then, I keep thinking of 28 Road, and that's just not big enough to hold that kind of traffic from Matchett Park. So I'm.
Yeah, I live over there.
Yeah, it's really scary.
Yeah.
When you think about it and trying to get onto Patterson there. Are you kidding me?
But you could expand, if that's really a problem, you expand 28 Road. And that's a lot cheaper.
But then that interchange there at Patterson and 28 Road, would you have to have a roundabout? What would you have to do there?
You might have to have a roundabout, or you can. There's a lot of solutions that
those people at Manny Heights will not allow a roundabout.
The Manny Heights people are very upset about the plan that we came up with soon after I got on council that would not allow them to make a left turn.
Left-hand turn. And I understand that because I was there fighting that one too.
Oh.
So you think that a roundabout would be better because then you could get around and you could just go.
Well, it would at least let those people out. I do know there is a big issue there right now. I mean, that stacks up all the way down when traffic is full on Patterson. you can't get on 28 Road to turn left at all.
And that should make the county happy, because if it's on 28 Road, then it's a city issue. And they can go, no money off our budget. Thank you very much.
So
Good
anyway,
point,
yeah,
good point.
all in all, then you may have opened my eyes to something that I think that probably the general public needs to know about, because I had no clue that you would only be committed for a year at a time. That's not a good way to go. I don't care. It's not a good business deal.
No.
No,
It's just not a good
it's
business
not good
deal.
for the county.
It's not good for the county. It's not good for the city.
And
I mean,
it's-
the city comes out a little better, but still in all, they're committing X amount all along at what money that could be going to other projects. So
Well, and it affects everybody, because you know that when Scott was here, he was saying city and county, and I think, but if the county's putting on out the bond issue, everybody's in the county, so
Yes.
we all get impacted. It's
you all
not
get
like
impacted. And then on the other hand, the city keeps annexing further towards Clifton all the time. So that's going to be tax dollars away from the county,
Yeah.
which is going to be an issue too.
Yeah. Exactly.
you picked up on that. Do you have any other arguments that
Well-
Ruth is missing out on?
Lay it on my
I
shoulders.
love being the neutral guy that goes, convince
Well, now
me.
we're on the same side now.
So, Dennis, you said that the city council is split on this issue. Who's in favor of it and who's against it, and what are their arguments?
Oh no, it's not going to be. We're going to have another hailstorm.
Oh,
I was
dear
here for
God,
the
no.
hailstorm.
Yeah.
The three that are opposed are Scott Bilefus, Jason Wynn, and me. And we have a variety of arguments, some of which Scott made when he was here, some of which I'm going to make, and some that may not get mentioned here. But Abe is very concerned. Not Abe. Scott is very concerned about the fact that this whole process was developed in a back room without allowing anybody except the four people who came up with this to bring staff in and talk to us. Scott asked if he could observe the meeting, and he was told no, and he was kind of berated at the city council meeting for
my.
saying it was a backroom meeting. It wasn't illegal, I don't think. But it's still, those people, which I think was Pete Bear and Cody from the county and Cody and Randall from the city. So I guess I'm kind of at a high level. I'm covering what I think the opponents are. There are three people opposed pretty strongly, and they're me and Jason Wynn and Scott Bilefus. Scott appeared here a month or so ago and explained some of the arguments. My arguments were obviously a little bit different than Scott's were, but Scott's are also valid in that he made a point that the whole plan was devised by four people or maybe five people who wouldn't allow him to attend the meeting as a spectator or allow anybody else to attend the meeting as a spectator. So he felt, and I agree with him, that it was kind of a backroom meeting. Backroom meeting that wasn't illegal. There's a difference between, since there's only two city council members in the meeting, it wasn't illegal. If they had one more in there participating or maybe even spectating, it could be argued that it should be an open meeting, which it should have been anyway. It should have allowed anybody to go to those meetings. And then Jason Wynn is opposed, and a lot is because the lack of commitment to the multimodular portion of this, and hasn't really. If he's presented his argument strongly, I can't reliably repeat them, but he is definitely a proponent of making sure people have a way of getting around town without taking their car.
Right.
And there's pros and cons of that. I'll leave it at that. But he's one of the opponents. The two that are adamantly in favor are Randall Wright and Cody Kennedy, who were the two on the committee that wouldn't let Scott attend. So that leaves two. And those people's argument are a lot. I'm sorry. They refer to the long-term commitment that long-term families have had. They've always dreamed of having this loop, but the dream came up a long time ago, and I'm responding to them. And there may be a need to figure out whether the real proposal now is worth being committed just because it's always been there. But there are two, and that's Abe and Anna, who voted yes, and so we had a 4-3 vote. And both of them stated they weren't even sure they were going to vote for this, but they wanted the taxpayers to make the decision. They didn't want us to make the decision. And I bought into their argument as long as we gave the city gave the people all of the facts, including this commitment to have the city, verbal commitment to we only make every year, and I couldn't convince them to do that. But when it came time to explain their votes, both of them said they weren't sure they're on the ballot that they were going to vote yes on this, and it's kind of hard for me to understand. So we really end up with two very committed people, and it could be 5 of us are going to vote no when the ballot comes, even though they got 4 votes together to enter this intergovernmental agreement. So I think it's going to be important to the community that people like you and others work at getting the word out, or maybe work on putting on more pressure on the city to get the word out, so that the city is doing its job, not making individuals dig out information, and a lot of times they will give you only some information, and they won't be fully transparent with, this is how things could cost.
Well, it's just frightening to me to think that we would go into that big of a project and not have full cooperation on both sides, and not permanent, not just year at a time. Mm-hmm. That's insane. Why would anybody ever want something like that?
And I think what you had mentioned before was, if they wanted to do this, it should be the city putting out a ballot proposal and the county putting out a ballot proposal, and see if, when you talk about this is our half and this is what we're raising a bond for, and this is our half and this is what we're raising a bond for to complete this, and this is what it'll look like.
Right. Even though city taxpayers would be in both ballots. But there are two different governments, and the mix of people, percentage-wise, is different if you're just the city or if you're city and the county.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
very interesting.
I have talked to an engineer at CMU who has studied this deeply, and she has all kinds of facts and information about the history and weaknesses of the arguments of the proponents, and I hope maybe someday you can have her come on here. But basically, what happened was, for years, when our area, our basically county, or the valley at least, would submit to the state what we thought that in order the most important projects were, always number 1 was the 29 road interchange, and number 2 was improvements to 29 road. For 20 years, nothing else ever moved ahead of those 2 projects. And keep in mind that the project for the interchange at least had the potential of federal money going into it, because it's a federal highway, although the feds aren't very interested in either. But the 29 road piece, the proponents knew that they were going to have money of their own. They weren't going to get any government money to redo 29 road, and the proponents also knew that we wouldn't even get approval to do it without money aside, unless we had that, and we have our own internal rules that unless we have a 5-lane road there with sidewalks and bike lanes of some kind, which would require a tremendous amount of additional land that would probably have to be condemned at a high price. And that whole idea is not in the $86 million that the proponents are touting. And while nobody's done a real good estimate, there's probably at least $30 million charitably that will be needed to widen that road. So what the proponents did was to say, we're going to take that off of that list. We're not going to tell the state that that's our second priority anymore, even though they would say it is. There's nothing more important in their mind than that. And they changed it to something called aspirational, which is, it didn't even make the list of what we think are the priorities. There's all kinds of things. And the conjecture is the reason they did that is so they could proceed with the interchange and figure a way to pay the extra $30 million later, which might be a combination of city and county money, just city money, who knows. But they have no solution to how they're going to come up to that money. And it very well could be a tax increase. And
because you did say that instead of the county defaulting on a loan, that they would put in that bond that they could raise the taxes to pay for the loan.
Yeah. I mean, they give assurances to the bondholders that they'll do whatever it takes to make that debt payment.
Oh,
City doesn't make any such commitment to the bondholders. They just make a commitment 1 year at a time to the county saying, we'll make our share. And nothing says, what if they do have to raise taxes? Will we raise our taxes at the same time? I mean, to the extent our county taxes would go up, but would the county expect city taxes itself to go up because the city has got more money in this whole deal? And I won't go into that in great detail because I'm a city resident. I'm a resident of the county too, so I'm on both halves of the deal. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. But it's just real concerning that they would pull that kind of a trick and then not tell us how they plan to come up with the extra money.
Mm-hmm. Well, it just needs to be out there to our public that this is an issue and they need to think about it before they say yes or no on this ballot issue. At this point, I'm beginning to wonder if it should have ever been put on the ballot in the first place until some of this stuff was ironed out.
Exactly.
Okay, Dennis, tell us about what is known as braiding. What is that going to be like? What kind of issues would that bring up?
Okay. The best of my understanding, although staff has not attempted to give us a detailed explanation, is that CDOT is concerned about safety. As cars come off of the 29 road interchange and then try to merge onto the interstate itself, and this problem has been statewide, and they've been the last few years come up with a rule that says they won't allow projects that the engineering studies say will cause more than one death or injury because of the existence of the interchange, which means like if somebody's running out of the lane in there when they're merging, they may perhaps not look well enough and run right into a truck that's sitting right next to them. And that's probably happened to a lot of us, potential. You can see that happen. And the state has said, we don't want any more of that. We want to design roads so that isn't an option.
Right, so you have that continuous lane.
Yeah. And so what the state apparently is asking for is that we have what's called a braided lane. So as you come up north on 29 road, and if you want to go on, we get on interchange and keep going past Horizon Drive, you will have one way to get out there where you don't have to merge, and you will merge as you get through Horizon Drive. And the other one is for people who want to get on at 29 Road and get off at Horizon Drive. And that's where they would put a road up above that you would never have to merge. You have to decide before you get to the interchange, do I want to get off on 30 Road or do I want to keep going? And do I want to get off at Horizon or do I want to keep going? And that road you will not be able to do anything other than, you won't be able to change your mind. You're going to exit on Horizon Drive. And that estimate for that braided second lane is about $30 million. I'm trying to get a better number, but you can imagine that it's not going to be a cheap project to build that thing up in the air so that we have two exits going off of 29 Road going west on Horizon.
So that's in addition to the interchange itself, which was 86 million.
86, yeah.
86 million. And then the changes to 29 Road itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the braided section.
Yeah, and the changes to 29 Road, I may have already discussed this, but we know that if we're going to put this whole structure in, that it's going to have to be a four or five lane, probably 5-lane road on 29 Road, and it may have to go clear past Patterson and down to North Avenue, but and probably will, because we'll be dumping a lot more traffic down that road. It won't all turn on Patterson.
No.
And
that would not be a good idea in any case.
Right. So we pulled the 29 Road project off of the list we've been given to the state and called it aspirational, which means it's not a priority at all. I mean, an aspirational project might be something that somebody thinks we ought to do in 20 years. But we told the state that we don't want to talk to them about 29 Road. And we haven't told the locals exactly how we're going to come up with the money to do the condemnations and then build a 5-lane road with bike path and sidewalks. And that is probably at least $20 million more. So we go from 86 to 30 extra for the braided second lane, and at least 20 more for widening 29 Road. And that number, I believe, is only to Patterson. There's not even a plan for how we're going to get the money to widen south of Patterson. So anyway, it's a lot more than it's a lot more than $86 million when you add it up. And the city and county are not talking about where they're going to get the money for those two extra projects that are necessary to make this successful. So you have to wonder, would you think they will have to have a tax increase later to provide the additional money, or they pull the city will make a 1-year commitment for even more money, since the city can walk away from anything as long as they make the current year payment. And there's no discussion from the proponents of how this is going to work and how we're going to get the money. It just is kind of skated over. So I'm concerned that we're going to end up with a tax increase coming down the road, and it's happened before where we say when we build the project that there's no tax increase. We've got enough money somehow, some way to build this. And then a few years later, when the other projects get cut because the money has to come from somewhere, they come back to us and say, your roads are falling apart, and the only way we can see to get them so they're up to snuff again is to have another tax increase. And rather than admitting that the real cause was that back in 2024 we approved this interchange, 29 Road interchange, which caused the ripple effect, they pretend like it's just something that happened and couldn't have been avoided, and will not talk about the 29 Road interchange decision. And once the decision is made to do this, then it's hard for anybody else to do anything more than just say, well, we told you so. But that doesn't do any
Right.
good.
That doesn't do any
Right,
good.
right, and at least they didn't tell us that it'd pay for itself.
No.
You put this money in now and it'll pay for itself.
Yeah. Yeah, we're making a toll road. They haven't said that yet.
Oh, good. Yes. Well, anything else that you haven't? Because I'm seeing Ruth, and she is sinking over here on this side.
My ship just sunk.
It's interesting. I talked about Abe and Anna not really being gung-ho in favor of this personally, but they just, politically, this seems to make most sense to them. But this county has put out a video, a very, very one-sided video, and Abe is the main city councilman, the only city councilman talking. He's talking about how great it is, how great it is, how great it is. But yet when he comes to the meeting where he gets a chance to vote, he says it may not be so great. He hasn't decided whether or not he's going to vote for it or not.
That's kind of a double standard.
Yeah, it is. And I hope the county stops putting out that stuff, especially when the city won't put out anything. They had have a glossy, video professionally done with pictures of everything and the route around town, and it's just not fair to all of the taxpayers, whether you're for or against it.
Mm-hmm. You just need the facts, and then let the people decide.
But the facts need to be presented, and that's what we're doing.
And they
today.
need to be somewhere where everybody can see it that wants to have a choice.
Yeah,
Yep.
must have a choice.
Yeah, and it's also will be important after this, if they see it, that they not get the last word on here. If they want to come in here, I ask you to let me or somebody else present the other side of the argument.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Always.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, because I may have tweaked something wrong, or it may not be 20 million, maybe 25 million. I don't have that on that.
What's a million?
Yeah,
Between
among
friends, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we see them, the truth as we know it. You decide.
Thank you, Dennis, very
You're
much.